But I would officially like to introduce Robin Martin, and again with joint venture, and really ties what we heard from Louis and Luciano together as what we call one of our leading experts in the county on SB 1383. So with that, we'd like to introduce Robin Martin.
Hey everybody, how you doing? I know I'm the end here at everyone's 5 o'clock, and it's a little detailed in a new state law, so we'll see if you can stick with me, and then the questions hopefully will be a little more interesting than my presentation. So I'm going to share the screen, and you're going to see all of you again for just a moment, and then I'll switch over to my presentation. Okay. All right, can you see this?
Yep.
Perfect. So most of my slides are just going to come straight from what we've gotten from the state. So we've got a new law coming from the state, SB 1383, and it covers a whole lot of things, and I'll have a few slides that talk about the big picture first, and then I'll get down into my specific piece, which has to do with the food recovery program in Santa Clara County. So the big picture is why, first of all, why do it, right? And the organic waste is one of the biggest waste streams in California, right? So we have food, paper organics, all the things that Louis was talking about before, is that it's a huge portion of what our waste stream actually is. And knowing that a good portion of that is food, and knowing in California just how many people are food insecure, not sure where their next meal is coming from, or when we think about Silicon Valley, it's a lot harder to reach that sustainability piece, right? So have your self-sustainability, being able to support yourself and your family, is a lot harder to get to in an area as expensive as ours in particular. So we really think about the balance of making sure that this food is not wasted, right, and heads to the folks that need it. And in the U.S., huge amounts, there's a lot of estimates that say 40%, and that's sort of, from the farm all the way to when it ends up in compost. No matter where you land on exactly how much you think it is, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. It's more than it should be. And so the hope with this law is that less of that perfectly good edible food ends up in the waste stream. And of course, that has big climate impacts that other folks have been talking about, and that it's the reason this law comes out of CalRecycle on the state level and not another entity, is because it has to do with this huge impact on climate change, that putting food into our waste stream, especially landfilled, ends up as methane gas and has a huge environmental impact on not just California, but worldwide. Food in landfill situations is a huge impact for climate change. So thinking about the law in particular, it covers it tries to address all of those organics going into the waste stream and divert them from landfill and divert them to other uses. So you've heard Louis talk about some of his diversion. They're trying to really do that. In 2020, they worked on 50%, and we're upping that even more. So by 2025 there, to have a 75% reduction in landfill organic waste, really trying to divert as much waste as possible away from being landfilled and becoming such a health hazard with all these methane gases. And so the 1383, the big dates, it rolls out January 1, 2022. And so all of the local government entities are needing to work on making sure that they're collecting those organics and diverting them to compost and other uses. They start a program to divert good food to people that need it. They've educated people, and procurement has to do with making sure they're buying compost, some of the compost that gets made, and they're planning for important capacity pieces. And I've got two slides that look pretty similar. First is the big picture, all of those entities and all of the jurisdictional responsibilities. And some of those at the end have to do with making sure you got that capacity piece and that we have the ability to do this, right? If we have all this additional compost coming in, if we've got all this additional food coming in, do we have the systems to handle that? And then monitoring compliance, because this is, after all, a law that a bunch of new entities will have to comply with. And then now we've gotten to the part that is actually my piece, right? The edible food recovery requirements and joint venture. My organization is going to help coordinate that for Santa Clara County. So we're helping support the jurisdictions, which just is a fancy way of saying cities, the cities and the county. We're going to help them get all of their ducks in a row and get ready to implement this. And we're going to help all of the food recovery organizations that pick up excess food. We're going to help them make sure they've got everything they need to be ready to recover this extra food and get it to folks that need it. So that has all of these same pieces, right? But it's all just focused on the food recovery piece. So other folks are thankfully taking care of the compost and the procurement, and I'm just focusing on making sure we get this food recovery part off the ground. And so right now, what are we doing? So we're thinking, we're focusing on like handouts and website PowerPoints, everything we need to do to educate the people that are going to be involved in this, right? We have to get educational materials out to all the businesses that have to start complying and all of the food recovery organizations that are going to pick up this excess and start complying. And we had a plan for the capacity, right? So we have to this part is the part where we're going to do a bunch of math, right? Think about how much edible food is there and do some good estimates on what's out there. Identify how much food is getting recovered, and then think about, all right, what's our difference there? How much new capacity to pick up extra food are we going to need? And of course, we'll have to work really closely with places like Hunger at Home and Second Harvest and others that are already working with this to see, okay, how much more could you take and what kind of funding would you need to do it and all of that. Making sure we're ready to do what needs to be done in Santa Clara County. So this is sort of who the food donors are going to be and when it rolls out, right? So starting January 1, 2022, the folks on the left-hand that slide, that's who's going to be required by law to be donating the maximum amount of their excess by the beginning of next year. And then all these other entities starting in 2024 will be required to donate the maximum amount of their excess to a food recovery organization, or basically just to human consumption, right? Their staff donate it to those in need, making sure it gets to people instead of the landfill. And so these are what what we call edible food generators, right? But all the folks you just saw on that previous slide, they have to recover their maximum amount. They have to have a contract in place, and they have to be able to collect it or have someone else self-haul it. It's important to make sure that they have a contract in place. So, and that's important for the places like Hunger at Home, right, to think about, so that they know it's us, we're responsible for it. They can set up systems to be ready, and they're always going to be the one that needs to do it, so they can plan their own systems in accordance for, knowing how much food is coming their way. They'll also have to maintain some records. We don't need to go into all of the details of this, but they'll have to maintain good records and let us know what kind of food they're recovering and how much. And so what does that mean, right? So prepared food, so with your restaurants and that kind of thing, they're going to have to start integrating this into what they do and think about, okay, if I have to donate the maximum amount of my excess, how should we do that? Figure out what needs to be donated, how to package it and label it safely, weigh it. They need to know how much they're donating it. And I just said properly chill, but that is a very that's a very simple way of saying some very complex food safety pieces, and we've got a whole big document that thinks about food safety and making sure we're doing a good job with that. Same way on the grocery side, right? To think about if groceries are going to donate their maximum amount, how can they identify what food to donate, right? Maybe think about things before they go bad, so that we can donate things while it's still safe for other folks to eat it, and to weigh it and to make sure that they're doing it in a safe way as well. And then the food recovery organizations like Hunger at Home, they'll have their own set of responsibilities to respond to the law. So they got to maintain records, report quantities, and help some of it with some of this capacity planning pieces as well. And the last thing I want to say is that it's so perfect that we came right after and talked right after the gentleman from the San Jose Conservation Corps, because they're going to be helping us out. They're going to be, some of their fellows are helping this summer to do some of this outreach and education for all of our businesses and our food recovery orgs. They're going to be, they're going to have some of their fellows that are going to help us get all of this off the ground in Santa Clara County. And so we're really excited to be working with them on this project. So I guess that's it for me. I can stop sharing so I can see you all again. There, hi.
All right, so for anyone that has any questions for Robin, if you want to go ahead and raise your hand. All right, I got Shanaz first. So Shanaz, you can go ahead and unmute and then ask your question.
How is it that 40% of food is wasted? Why isn't this food being eaten?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. And it's something we're all working really hard on, right? And 40% sounds big, but it comes from a lot of different sources, right? So if you think about the food that goes bad in your refrigerator because you thought you were going to eat a lot of salad and you didn't, that's part of it, right? You were optimistic at the grocery store. That's part of our food waste picture too. And then you think about at the restaurant level where they had to plan, well, what if you did order steak? What if you all ordered steak? And so they had to have enough on hand in case that was the case, right? And then there ends up being a little excess on that front. The distributors that are not sure who, which restaurants are going to buy that much steak. And so they want to make sure they have enough, the producers and distributors. And then we get all the way back to the farm level where they have to plan 6 months, a year in advance for how many steaks do we think people are going to want, a year from now, and how many cows are we going to have at a certain point in time. So each of these steps in the process, and then sometimes there's shipping issues or it's hard to get things from here to there and have them not go bad. So 40% sounds big, and it is, but it's and we're trying to lessen it, and we do it bit by bit. I always think of it as like a huge, airliner or like a giant cruise ship that we're trying to very slowly move in a better direction, right? And shave off a little of the excess here and there, and so that 40% becomes 30 and 25. And that's some of what California is trying to do with this new law, right? They're trying to waste less of that food and get it to people that need it. That's a good question. Yes, come and join us this summer. Work with the Conservation Corps. Do your part. I think I've got some other questions.
Yeah, it looks like we have Lucy is next.
Is there any type of food that can't be donated?
Yeah, so everyone has a little bit different rules. So I can't say across the board. There are some that say this and some that say that. I'm working on a state board right now. I'm working with a statewide recycling commission, and we are trying to see, okay, what are our commonalities around that front? And we're starting with something that we started locally that Yul here weighed in on and reviewed for me. So we started with our local Santa Clara County protocols document. And we said, okay, so this is what we're doing in just this place. And I have a great subcommittee of people from all over the state, and we've had some producers and people weigh in, and we're trying to get to a place where we can sort of say, what is good and safe, and what are the dates, and what are our norms, right? So if we say prepared food that we get, we'll use for this many days, right? And maybe it's a couple more days if it's in this situation, and it's a couple less if it's seafood or mayonnaise, or kind of what are our norms statewide. And we're trying to do that around some of vacuum packed vegetables, right? And those are a little different than if vegetables are loose, and we have sort of different dates and timelines. So it's not a finite answer, but it's saying that we're trying to see, can we have some norms and standards across the board? And there's some great documents out there. USDA has some really fantastic ones. If you're curious, they have like 4 pages on what kinds of dents in cans are okay to eat and what kinds are not. And they've got photos and pictures. And so there's a lot of people trying to think about this and like, how long can we really use food safely? And let's try to use as much of it as we can, which is the business that Yule is in.
All right, so it looks like I've got the next question on the list comes from Garrick. Garrick, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi. So I think SB 1383 sounds like amazing, but like, are there any like cons or hesitancies to this policy?
Well, it depends on who you talk to, right? I think people are, whenever you legislate something new, people get a little nervous, right? And especially folks on our local side that have not worked in food before. They've maybe worked in recycling and now they're needing to think about food, or vice versa, right? They've worked in food all this time and now they're needing to deal with all these like recycling professionals, right? And so finding a common language for everyone to work with, and we're learning across the board. So CalRecycle is responsible for doing this on the state level, and they are doing a fantastic job of putting out all kinds of guidance and model tools, but they're also learning to enact this thing too with us at the same time, right? And we as California, it's the first time we have ever done this. So we're really putting ourselves out there. No other state has legislated food donation in this way at all. So we are, it's brave new territory here for all of us. We're really hoping some other states follow suit. There's a lot of other states watching us to see how it goes and to see how this works, because I think there have been some other states that have been really interested in, Oregon and Washington, I've heard too, are interested in doing the same kind of thing. So there is hesitancy with all of us. We don't know how it's going to play out, but there's a lot of excitement that we're actually doing this, right? It's a new, I guess I can't stress enough how it really is a very new way of thinking about it. It's not just, hey, let's donate some of our extra, which is what many grocery stores have been doing forever. And it's often their food from their bakery or stuff that is easy, but the law says the maximum amount. So it's really on them then to think, okay, how can I get this to folks that need it before it goes bad? What I typically do is let it go to compost and then stick it in the compost. I let everything go bad. But how can they think of themselves as being a little bit earlier in the chain, and that there's an entity that comes after them and making sure that there's as much food as possible that gets to this second distributor, right? It's a new way of thinking about food. So fingers crossed, we really start to distribute a lot more food this way. And also there's hopefully probably some prevention that comes along with it, right? Some of that zero waste. They'll have to start tracking, the businesses will have to start tracking how many pounds they donate. And that's a lot of good information, right? If they see, whoa, I'm donating, 1,000 pounds of X or Y every week, then they can start having a good feedback loop to not order as much, lettuce or cookies or whatever it is. So I'm hoping there's probably going to be a prevention component as well.
All right, looks like we have one more question from Lisa. Lisa, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Aiden, and thanks, Robin. This is amazing stuff. So thanks for taking the time out today. So I had a couple questions, and I think you might have touched on some. Was that 40% just California, not the country?
They say that nationwide. That's sort of a
okay.
Okay. Yes.
And how do we compare with other countries? Is my first question. And the second one is, with the law now, with it being law, where everyone has to actually prepare to donate their food, do we have the capacity? Do we have like, hundreds and thousands of hungers at homes to distribute all the additional food that is going to start coming in because it's required?
Yes. So that is a question that will be answered with this capacity analysis, right?
Okay.
Where we're
Okay.
going to
Yep.
be determining how, what are we doing already, and how much do we think we're going to need? It's a prediction, so it's hard
Sure.
to say exactly how much excess we're going to need. And I think it'll be a little bit of a bubble in that there'll be some pretty high numbers early on, and then there'll be a few things that pull that down, some of which being prevention, like I said before. So there'll be this initial huge donation, and then I have a feeling some of that'll tail off as people get better at ordering and we start doing some better prevention.
Yep.
But we are definitely thinking about the capacity piece, right? And some of that will be low-hanging fruit, right? So all of those great organizations that are already doing this really great work will definitely be the people we go to first. We don't need to develop an entirely new system for some organizations that have been doing this very well for many years. So the idea is that they will tell us, and I'd say us as representing the county and jurisdictions, what they need to be able to expand and take on, additional capacity, and that we'll go from there.
And expect expand will include funding, because I can't imagine that they can rely on just 100% donations to continue again at this now required capacity, right? That just seems like a ton more work, and to get it done, funding comes with people, and you know how that works.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
great. Good.
I know
Thank you.
there's going to be. I mean, I certainly can't promise where that funding is going to come from, but it is a definite big part of the conversation, right? There's
so.
Zero expectation that these nonprofits operating on shoestring budgets are going to be able to do this without any additional funding. So we're exploring a bunch of different ways to try to make sure that they get the funding that they need to be able to expand. And once we put some numbers with that, that's always easier, right? Once we have a number to say, we think there'll be X more pounds, then it's easier across the board to try to fundraise for that in a bunch of different ways.
Which is why you're making restaurants be responsible for providing that input as well, right? That data is important to be able to, makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah,
yep.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
great. Thank you. This is very educational. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
You got it.
All right, so we just got time for one more question from Michael. So Michael, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Robin. I'm Michael Miller. I'm the president of Hunger at Home and been involved for a bunch of years now. And my question for you is, I know that this program or some kind of version of this program is happening in some other countries. And I'm wondering if there's any kind of tracking of how well that's been received, how they're enforcing it, and if they're having positive results that we can kind of model against.
Yeah, you know what? I've seen some of that up on the CalRecycle website. They have referenced France's program and a few other European locales, and I had a good conversation with some folks that are doing some very similar work in Australia. But as for like trying to compare apples to apples, I'm not. I don't really know. I'm not sure how. I don't know enough about it to be able to speak with confidence how we do and how we compare to other nations. But this is a thing we're all grappling with. It's not like this is simply a U.S. problem. This sort of thing is happening the world over. There are programs trying to get excess food to the people that need it in India and everywhere else. This is like something that is happening all over, or where we're trying to make sure that this excess food is not wasted. So we're not alone. There is some conversation going on, and ReFed, a national organization, they do some of this tracking, right? So they do some of these big numbers things, and they do some worldwide data to say sort of what are the metrics on worldwide, how we're doing, nationwide, how we're doing, and how that all fits together. So they'd probably be a better resource than me. They're more well-versed in it than I am.
And I'm just thinking in terms of how this can potentially go viral, and usually it's by success stories, right? So it's working, we can get other states involved, and and this is the goal, to kind of make a significant dent in hunger.
Yeah.
And at the same time help our environment.
Right, absolutely. It's a win-win, right? It has this huge, obvious environmental impact. Sorry, that's my puppy telling me it's time for dinner. And yeah, exactly. And it definitely has like feeding people, right? That's such a huge piece that we can't lose track of with all this data about all these other numbers, that these are humans that could use this food. And I'm glad we're going to get it to the folks that need it the most.
Great.
Awesome.
All right. Robin, as always, so informative. Every time that I have an opportunity to listen and to speak with you, I learn something new. I think we all are, right, as this thing comes. Think about, for a minute, having 7 high schools here just so interested in these topics. When I was in school, I probably would have lost interest in a minute, which is terrible, but there's so much compassion about what we're doing. And I can't thank you enough for your time, and Luciano and Louis, it's been amazing. Let's wrap